Okay, here we go. Here we go. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about umla, the insane superfood that can change your life. So these berries right here in the background, that's what umla actually looks like when it comes off of a plant. It's pretty gorgeous. It looks like a grape with veins. Here's what we're going to cover today. 5 major topics. What are antioxidants and why are they important? What's the big stink about antioxidants? Number 2, how does umla lower your cholesterol? Number 3, umla versus pharmaceutical medications, right? Which one's more effective? Because umla has been actually put head to head in a boxing match against statin medications and against blood glucose medications. And I'll show you exactly what happened. We also are going to talk about why umla is not widely available in the grocery store and why it's kind of hard to get your hands on. And then we'll show you how you can get your hands on umla so that you can use it in your program to maximize your metabolic health. Quick rundown of who I am. You guys have maybe, some of you have heard this before, maybe not. My name is Cyrus. I was diagnosed with 3 autoimmune conditions in my senior year of college. Not 1, not 2, but 3. I got Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, followed by alopecia, which is why I don't have any hair. And then I got type 1 diabetes, all of those within 6 months of each other. I was pretty scared when this whole thing happened because here I am, just a happy-go-lucky, 22-year-old trying to graduate from Stanford, and all of a sudden my whole world came crashing down on me. So my doctors told me, eat a low-carbohydrate diet because that's what you do when you have type 1 diabetes. More cheese, more fish, more eggs, more meat, more bacon, and just small amounts of things that have carbohydrate in them. So, I tried to make it work. I honestly did. I gave it my full effort. Blood glucose all over the place. It could be a 40, it could be a 340, it could be an 80, it could be a 280. I became depressed, I got really low energy, and I honestly couldn't really exercise anymore. And that to me was the clincher because if you take away my ability to move my body, you have a serious, serious problem. So at the point where I was not able to move my body as much, I decided that I needed a different approach altogether. So I started reading everything under the sun, looking, talking, learning, and one thing led to another, and I was open to the idea of becoming a plant-based eater. And this was actually very interesting because up until that point, I literally used to make fun of people who ate vegetarian and vegan diets. People would say, hey, I'm a vegetarian, and then I would say, oh, I'm sorry, I wish things were better for you. I was a little bit, I had a little bit of pride back in the day, and quite honestly, I didn't know that much. And so here I was being faced with the option of becoming a plant-based eater, and I said, you know what, I feel pretty junky, let me take it. So over the course of the first 3 weeks, I increased my carbohydrate intake big time, starting at about 125 grams all the way up to 600 grams per day, and my fat intake fell. So blue is carbohydrate, red is fat. Lots more carbohydrate at the expense of dietary fat. And so I was expecting that because this blue line was going up, that my insulin use would also follow the same trend because that's what the doctors told me, and that's what all the diabetes books said, and that's what everybody who knows anything about diabetes says. But this is what happened. My insulin use came down. It fell by 40% in the first 3 weeks, and it didn't make any sense to me because I was eating more carbohydrate, but I was taking less insulin. So this is where I got really interested. I then went back to school. I studied at UC Berkeley for 5 years. I got a PhD in nutritional biochemistry so that I could understand the nitty gritty, super nerd scientific details of what the heck was happening in my body so that I could explain it using science. And as a result of that, I realized in a very short period of time that low fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition has been very well described for almost a century, except the research world doesn't really, people in the real world don't really practice it very much. So here I am 15 years later. I've cut my insulin use by 40% overall since the first time I started. On a daily basis, I can sometimes eat upwards of 900 grams per day, depending on how active I am. There's 900 grams of carbohydrate. I inject approximately 25 units of insulin per day. And my A1C values are usually between about 5.4 and 5.7 on a, every time I get them checked. So that's me. All right, so now that you guys know who we are, let's get into the meat of the presentation here. First topic, I want to talk about what are antioxidants and why are they important for your cellular health, okay? So your diet is what determines your mitochondrial health. Now, maybe you fell asleep in high school biology class. I know I did. But if you have never heard of mitochondria before, it's worth paying attention, because mitochondria are very, very, very important organelles that are present in practically every single cell type in your body. So these mitochondria are responsible for generating energy. If you did not have mitochondria in you, you would not be alive. These things can crank out lots of energy in a very short period of time. And the way that they do it is they take the food that you consume, they take the nutrients from the food you consume, and they metabolize it, and they create this stuff called ATP. And then the ATP is what actually powers cellular reactions, and it allows you to open your eyes and breathe and walk around and perform exercise and think. So your mitochondrial health is actually very, very, very important. So when you consume high-fat, high-calorie, or high-sugar diets, mitochondria end up generating these things called free radicals. So think about it like this. Imagine you had a car engine, and the engine was responsible for, burning fuel and then creating power for your car to move down the road. If you tried to burn super clean burning fuel, your emissions would be nice and low. But if you're burning dirty fuel, a fuel that may be old, or maybe it has a lot of lead inside of it, as a result of that, your engine would wear out quicker, and you would end up producing a lot more exhaust. So think of these red free radicals as basically a form of exhaust that mitochondria produce. So what's the problem? Well, these free radicals, they are like these red-headed stepchildren that just go all over the place, and they just start causing damage to cellular structures everywhere. So the first thing that free radicals do is they cause direct DNA damage, and this is a huge problem. So mitochondria are, part of a cell. You usually have anywhere between 10 and 500 copies of mitochondria inside of a cell, depending on where it lives. And when you generate free radicals, these free radicals can damage DNA inside the mitochondria, because mitochondria have their own DNA. And then the free radicals can also travel to the nucleus and damage DNA. The minute that DNA gets damaged, that's when alarm bells go off inside of the cellular environment. The nucleus goes crazy. All of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of enzymes that are now responsible for trying to fix that damage. And if this damage perpetuates over the course of time, you end up creating a perfect environment for what are called oncogenes that then can turn into what's the word I'm looking for? They can turn into damaged genes that can then create cancerous cells. So free radicals are the basis of inflammation, and free radicals are the basis of now, free radicals also cause what's called protein oxidation. So proteins that are present in all parts of the cell, whether they're inside the mitochondria themselves, or inside the nucleus, or inside of the endoplasmic reticulum, or in the cell membrane, it doesn't matter. Proteins everywhere get assaulted by free radicals, end up causing significant damage to the actual and then they also damage. So this process is called lipid peroxidation, and that's a way of saying that free radicals can or modify or cause damage to lipids all throughout the cell. And these lipids are very, very, very important, because these lipid membranes, this is what actually protects the cell. This is what gives a cell its structure. Think of this as like a wall that all cells have around them. And this wall is made up of a bilayer of lipids. If you damage this lipid bilayer, and you now create holes, or you create opportunities for stuff from the outside world in the blood to get inside of here, even though it's not supposed to be there. So free radicals are all of those reasons. Now, free radicals understand that, free radicals cause extensive, what's called oxidative stress everywhere in your body. So in this picture, you see that this skeleton, this guy is, he's inflamed in his shoulders and his elbows and his wrists and his hips and his knees. But in reality, the oxidative damage that occurs as a result of high fat, high calorie, and high sugar diets, it also happens right here in your heart. It happens in your brain. It happens in your thyroid gland. It happens in your liver. It happens in your pancreas. It happens in your sexual glands. It happens inside of your Achilles tendon. It's everywhere. You cannot stop free radicals from being formed when your diet is high in calories, high in fat, and or high. So to prevent free radical damage, you basically have two options. Number one, you minimize the amount of free radicals that are actually produced by mitochondria, right? And that's right here, limit the supply. Or number two, you can eat antioxidant-rich foods that effectively quench existing free radicals. So think of these, these antioxidants as basically being firefighters. They come in and they put out fires wherever those fires may exist. So you have two options. You either clean up your diet so that you're making less free radicals in the first place, or number two, you put out the fires if that's possible. So again, you eat high fat, high calorie, high sugar diet, you end up with a lot of free radicals. If you eat an antioxidant rich diet instead, the amount of free radical formation goes down significantly. And as a result of that, now fewer free radicals causes fewer DNA damage or fewer DNA repair opportunities. Fewer free radicals reduce the amount of protein oxidation inside of the cellular architecture, and fewer free radicals limit the amount of lipid peroxidation. Now, it turns out that plant foods contain, on average, not one, not two, not three, not five, but 64 times as much antioxidant content as animal foods do. So that's to say, if you take animal foods like turkey and fish and eggs and meat and milk and cheese, and you put them over here on one side, and then you compare them against plant-based foods like beans and berries and rice, for heaven's sakes, and bananas and apples and oranges and broccoli, and you do a head-to-head comparison of the average antioxidant content of fruits and vegetables versus the average antioxidant content of animal products, fruits and vegetables win, not by double, not by triple, not by 5 times, not by 10 times, by 64 times. It is not even a competition. Okay, and we know this because researchers in, I believe this researchers are in the UK. They wrote this article not too long ago where they analyzed 3,100 different foods that you can find in the grocery store, and they tried to figure out the antioxidant content, and that's what they came up with. Now, if you rank order, if you take a look at the foods that are the highest in their antioxidant content, what you will find is this. The food that has the most antioxidant content is called dragon's blood. And to this day, I have no idea what this is. So if anybody knows what dragon's blood is, please feel free to write it in the chat box, okay? If you look at everything underneath that, you got, a supplement, you got a powder, okay? You got another powder, so not whole food, not whole food, not whole food. You have a bran, not whole food. You got a spice, not whole food. And then you end up with Indian gooseberries dried. This is the first whole food on the list. It has the highest antioxidant content of any whole food ever discovered. More than pomegranate, more than blackberries, more than goji berries, more than turmeric. It's absolutely insane how much higher Indian gooseberries are than the rest of the other high antioxidant content foods. Okay, so again, if you take a deeper look here, you can see that these are berries, fruits, and vegetables isolated from this analysis, and you'll see here that I highlighted the ones in red that are high. So like moringa, which is found in Africa, right? This is a dried leaf that comes off of a tree. It's got a high antioxidant content. It's got an 11.9 on this ORAC scale. Dog rose, again, this one's a 78. Bilberries, this is a 48. Fantastic. African baobab, 48. Look at amla, 261. It's like nothing even compares to this stuff, right? The next closest competitor is, maybe this guy, the 69.4. But like we're talking orders of magnitude higher than the rest of its competitors. And yet very few people even know about this stuff in the first place. Okay, so amla has not only has exceptionally high antioxidant power. Okay, they said in this paper here that there's 13 samples with exceptionally high antioxidant capacity in this category, including dried amla, which comes in at 265. And this is just this type of unit is basically, don't worry about the details, but this is basically how powerful amla can be. Now, okay, great. So amla's got a lot of antioxidants. Awesome. What is that going to do for you? What is the whole point of antioxidants, right? Check this out. If you take amla and you feed it to people and you watch what happens to their cholesterol levels over the course of 21 days, feeding amla in small amounts, and I'll show you exactly how much in a second, takes people's cholesterol right here. This is their LDL cholesterol, which is technically elevated, and it drops it, and it drops it, and it drops it again. So subject number 1 in this study didn't really change at all. But subjects 2, 3, and 4 changed significantly, and their LDL concentrations dropped by as much as 50%. It's unbelievable. Even statin medication can't get you this drastic of a drop, especially within the first 3 weeks. Now, if you take a look at HDL cholesterol, right? HDL cholesterol is the good cholesterol. So a little bit more HDL is good, and a little bit less less LDL is good. So the same study over the course of 21 days, you started out with HDL concentrations right here in the mid 40s. By the time 3 weeks was up, now we're up in the 50s, 60s, and even 80s. It's a big, big, big change in a short period of time. Triglycerides, you want less of this stuff because this is an indicator of total fatty acid content in your blood. Again, triglycerides started up here in the 280s and 220s. And over the course of 21 days, we ended up with 134, 147, 272, which didn't seem to change, and 214, which didn't change. So triglycerides go down in some subjects, but it doesn't necessarily change in others. So researchers were then, they said to themselves, all right, well, let's just test this head to head. All right, we're going to create a study where we take amla and we literally compare it exactly against statin medication. And so researchers in India basically did this exact experiment, and they compared amla versus this stuff called simvastatin, which is a type of statin that's commonly prescribed here in the United States. Here's what they did. They took 60 people living with high cholesterol. That's what hyperlipidemic means. So 60 people with high cholesterol were, let's see here, 40 of them were treated with amla, and 20 of them were given simvastatin. Why they didn't split it 30 and 30, I don't know the answer, but that's what they did. So they treated 40 with amla, they treated 20 people with simvastatin, okay? And they gave them 20 milligrams of simvastatin, and they let this experiment go for 42 days. Well, what the heck happened? Okay, in white you got amla, in black you have simvastatin. So total cholesterol fell for both amla and simvastatin equally. LDL fell for both amla and simvastatin equally. HDL increased for both simvastatin and amla. This looks like simvastatin did a little bit more. VLDL, okay, which is another type of precursor to LDL, looks like the statin medication won. And then triglycerides looks like the statin medication won. So as far as total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and HDL cholesterol is concerned, amla is just as effective as simvastatin. Now, I want to point out one really, really, really important thing here, which is that of all these different lipoprotein particles, LDL right here, this guy is without doubt the most important of all of them. And we've done other webinars about this, and we've written articles about LDL cholesterol. LDL cholesterol is the type of cholesterol that is most strongly correlated with heart disease. In other words, it doesn't really matter what's happening to your VLDL. It doesn't really matter what's happening to your triglycerides. It matters, but not as much. Your LDL concentration, there is a linear relationship between how much LDL you have in your blood and your risk for heart disease. The higher this number goes, the more your risk for heart disease. So as you can see here, amla decreased your LDL concentration even better than simvastatin, just a little bit better. And this is something that we're going to go into a little bit more detail here in a second. Okay, so the question is, all right, which one's more effective? Okay? So let's take a look at the safety of statin medications, because again, statins are prescribed for, people with high cholesterol. They're prescribed for people with diabetes who don't even have high cholesterol. Okay? This is what's called the standard of care. So if you're a doctor and you are presented with a patient that has some form of metabolic disease, whether it's prediabetes or type 2 diabetes or even type 1 diabetes, the standard of care, the rule book basically says, if patient presents with blank, then prescribe statins. And oftentimes the statin medication that patients are prescribed is a very high dose statin. And the idea here is that if you can just control their LDL concentrations, then you can significantly reduce their risk for heart disease. Okay, great. But here's the problem. Statin medications are horrendous in the number of side effects they cause. Number one, hemorrhagic stroke. This is a stroke that can kill you. Okay, peripheral neuropathy. This is when you have nerve tingling in your arms and your legs. This is when you get lightning bolts as a result of high blood glucose. So high blood glucose can cause peripheral neuropathy. So can statin medications? What? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, cognitive impairment, inability to think properly. Those that have cognitive decline over time are at risk for Alzheimer's disease. So something doesn't seem to be making any sense here, because you're taking a medication that can reduce your LDL cholesterol, but at the same time, the side effects include other conditions that could become more important than LDL cholesterol. It increases your cancer risk. What? It increases your breast cancer? What? How is that even legal? That doesn't make any sense. And then as far as your reproductive health is concerned, a lot of men suffer from erectile dysfunction as a result of taking a statin medication. Something doesn't make sense. Okay? Check this one out, because this information just came out actually within the last 3 or 4 years. When I read this, I just started laughing. It was just unbelievable. Okay? Statins by themselves can increase your risk of type 2 diabetes by between 9 and 12%. Let me say that again. Statins can increase your risk for type 2 diabetes by between 9 and 12%. So think about it this way. You're living with diabetes. You go to the doctor puts you on statin medication, and as a result of that, now you're at risk for more diabetes. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? In this paper, we identified 174 more cases of incident diabetes in the groups assigned to statin treatment than in the placebo, or the group that was receiving no medication, representing a 9% increase in the likelihood of development of diabetes during the follow-up period. Doesn't make sense. Another paper, this is a meta-analysis where they analyzed the results of other studies. Here you go. Don't worry about all these numbers. It's confusing. Right here, this is all you need to know. The odds ratio. Okay? The odds ratio. If you take a statin medication, you are at a 12% higher risk for the development of type 2 diabetes. You have got to be kidding me. I know this number isn't that large, but it's greater than 0, and that's a huge problem. Okay, so now let's compare AMLA versus diabetes medication. Okay, another paper came out not too long ago, and here they're basically trying to directly compare the effect of AMLA versus diabetes medication, and they're going to track both the blood glucose and lipid profile of normal subjects, okay, and people with type 2 diabetes. So here's what they did. They took this drug called glimepiride, which is a commonly prescribed drug for type 2 diabetes, and they treated people in red with glimepiride. So they started here on day 0. They treated them with glimepiride, and their fasting blood glucose fell from the type 2 diabetes zone, which is greater than 125, down into the safe zone, which is less than 100. So the change was very quick. Within 1 week, they got a drastic reduction in their blood glucose. Then it went down a little bit more. Then it went down a little bit more. Now, if you feed people AMLA instead of glimepiride, here's what happens. Their fasting blood glucose kind of comes down, and then it comes down, and then it comes down even more. How about if you feed them 2 grams a day? Well, it comes down, then it comes down again, then it comes down just as much as glimepiride. What if you feed them 3 grams a day? Well, it comes down just like it did with glimepiride, and then it comes down more, and then it comes down more. So the take-home message from this is that 3 grams of amla is by far the most powerful treatment of any treatment here, and it's more effective than glimepiride. Okay? So once I started reading all this data, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Something's wrong here, because if this stuff is so good, why doesn't everybody know about it? Okay? And I asked myself, I was like, this stuff has got to be too good to be true. There's got to be some weird, side effect that it causes. I just don't know what it is. But it turns out that amla is actually, it's considered a hypoglycemic, meaning it'll reduce your blood glucose. It's an antioxidant, as we discussed earlier. It decreases lipid peroxidation, as we discussed earlier. It's antibacterial, so it actually functions as an antibiotic. It's anti-ulcerogenic, meaning that it can actually fight against the development of ulcers. Hepatoprotective, which means it actually protects against liver dysfunction. And it's gastroprotective, which means it fights against or protects against dysfunctions of your stomach. Okay. In addition, here's what amla can do. Okay. This is where my socks were blown off, right? It's cardioprotective. It protects your heart, your brain, your lungs, your skin, your hair growth. This right here is I think it's a kidney, so your immune system. Okay. It's a venom antidote. Look at that. In case you get stung by a snake, boom, there you go. It's hepatoprotective. It protects your liver. It's anti-inflammatory against musculoskeletal problems. It improves your memory. Okay. Mildly it can act as a laxative depending on how much you take. It's antimicrobial. It protects your eyes. It's anti-hypothyroidism. It protects your kidneys, and it's anti-diabetic. Name one other food that has this much positive benefit. Bring it to me. I don't know what it is. I've never seen anything like this before. So the question is, why is this stuff not everywhere? Here's why. I'll tell you exactly why. Number one, amla has to be imported into the United States. It's almost impossible to find this stuff grown in the U.S., so you got to get it from outside the U.S., mainly from India, because that's where it is grown. The raw crops can often be contaminated. So getting a high quality amla is challenging. Just getting amla isn't that big of a deal, but getting something that's actually not contaminated with fungus or mold or has lead contamination in the soil, that can be a difficult thing. Also, from crop to crop, maybe you'll get a good crop this year and then a junky crop the next year, or maybe you'll get a good crop in one part of India and then you'll get a junky crop in another part of India. Okay. Also, organic amla is very challenging to find because oftentimes amla is treated with pesticides because it's such a valued fruit, especially in Ayurvedic medicine in India. This is the #1 most commonly prescribed fruit in all of Ayurvedic medicine for the past 2,000 years. You present with some problem, they say, oh, why don't you take amla? You should take some amla. You should take some amla. Most people in India know about this stuff. Most people in India have access to this stuff. They use it all the time, and they get incredible results. So finding organic amla is hard to find because, again, there's pesticide use all over the place. But here's the #1 drawback, without question. Amla tastes like crap. It is so hard to put down. When I first learned about this stuff, I went to Amazon and I ordered a number of different supplements because I was really curious about how to make it and how to use it and how could I recommend it to other people. And it doesn't matter how I used it, whether I put it in a smoothie or whether I put it in a soup or whether I mixed it with water or whether I, salt water gargled with it. Like, it just doesn't matter. This stuff was so bad that I put it in my mouth and I was like, almost gagging because it was so bitter, right? So the question that we asked ourselves, both Robbie, myself, was, can we improve the taste of amla without sacrificing any of its actual biological activity? Because if we could do that, then we have ourselves a very important addition to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. So here was the mission at hand. #1, find a high-quality amla. How are we going to get this stuff, right? We made sure that it met all of these standards. #1, 100% organic or 100% wild harvested, which means it's got no pesticides. It's got to be non-GMO, culinary grade, free of lead, free of fungus, free of microbes, and very concentrated. Okay, that's what we were looking for. #2, this is where I put my laboratory skills back to the test. And I spent many a night in our apartment in San Francisco and trying to mix amla with all different types of teas. I mean, I was going to Chinatown. I was talking to everyone under the sun. I was researching on the internet, and I turned our house into a chemistry lab because I was looking for a way to mask the flavor without, again, sacrificing its biological activity. Okay? And then number 3, the goal was to make this experience actually enjoyable, something that you would want to do, something that you could repeat, something that's actually sustainable within your lifestyle, rather than feeling like this is some kind of pill that you have to swallow every day just because some guys on the internet told me it was good for me. Okay? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for an experience that's actually pleasurable, heaven forbid. So here's what we came up with. This stuff called Amla Green. We took Amla, we mixed it with green tea, and we ended up practically masking the flavor almost entirely. And what you end up with is, even though it's mixed with green tea, because Amla itself has a brown color, the combination of the two of those ends up making it look like this. So it's got kind of this brown cocoa powder looking texture to it. And what you do is you take a little scoop. There's a scooper inside of the jar. You take that scoop, it's really small, and you put this into a glass of water, and then you steep it for a couple of minutes. It dissolves the powder, and then you end up with a tea. So you can see here basically on the back of the package, we talk about the fact that this is a 20x Amla concentrate. So what that means is that you'll start with 20 grams of berries, and you will and the manufacturer will basically grind that up into 1 gram of Amla. So every gram that you're consuming actually has 20x that much in the actual berry. In other words, a little bit goes a very long way. Okay, it's wild harvested. It's tested for heavy metals and impurities. It's very low in both of those. And this stuff is metabolic gold. Okay, so here we go. Non-GMO, no preservatives, no gluten, no starch, peanut-free, yada, yada, yada. So here we go. This is what people are saying about it. One person who started taking this said, for the first time in 10 years, my blood sugar is consistently below 180. So fasting blood glucose over the past 10 days is under 118, and some of them are below 100. So look at this. Started at 180 fasting blood glucose, and over in a 10-day period, she dropped her blood glucose from 180 all the way down to 100 and sometimes below. Okay, and this is the only change she made to her diet. That's it. That's all she did. Okay, and then if you look on Amazon, we've been getting review after review after review from people that's just like, we just love seeing this. Absolutely love seeing this. People are saying like, oh, it doesn't taste bad. It's really smooth. I'm already eating a plant-based lifestyle, and I've still been able to cut my blood pressure medication down even more using Amla Green. Okay, I've been living with type 2 diabetes, and I've been using this stuff now for over 10 days, and it tastes really good. It's easy to put down. Okay, blood glucose reduction, again, 196 fell to 162 in a short period of time. So that's 30 points in a very short period of time. And these reviews are just deep. There's over 72 reviews online as of today, and it's really, what it's showing to us is that what we've created is actually quite powerful, and it seems to be benefiting a lot of people in a short period of time. So obviously that makes us feel really good, and we're very happy about that. So one thing I want to draw to your attention is what I'm not trying to insinuate here, that if you are looking to reduce your blood glucose, reduce your cholesterol, reduce your triglycerides, reduce your blood pressure, that the answer is to go to Amazon and buy Amla Green. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that Amla works in conjunction with a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. So first and foremost, what Ravi and myself do is we teach you how to eat a plant-based diet, how to eat a plant-based diet that is low in fat and that has nothing but whole foods in it. That we strongly recommend that to be your starting point. If this part of your plan is not in place, this is just going to be a Band-Aid. That's all it is. It's just a fancy Band-Aid that's going to try and reverse some of the dysfunction that your meat-centric, dairy-centric, high-calorie, high-fat, high-sugar diet is causing. So what is very important to understand is that, number one, start with a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. Get this under control before you do anything else. Then, in addition to that, add Umla Green. Add Umla Green because it's going to lower your blood glucose even more. It's going to lower your blood cholesterol even more. It's going to lower your triglycerides even more. So in combination, both your diet and Umla Green, we consider them to be what's called metabolic gold. We literally do not know of a more powerful combination than the two of these together. What we've seen from people is that as soon as you stock up on this stuff, you just start using it. It's the consistency of using Umla Green that gets you the results you're looking for. If you try and take this stuff, every other day, or you try and take this stuff, once a week, whatever, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. But the real true power, again, is in eating a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet and adding this stuff to your diet every single day. You get this stuff in your body, just watch as, your metabolic health continues to climb, continues to get better, and your doctor becomes even happier and happier. So what we can do is start taking a bunch of questions now, because I know that you guys have been asking a ton of questions in the chat box. And let's see, what you guys have. Okay, so let's start with question number 1. All right. So Janavi asked, what about cloves? I thought they have more antioxidants. Okay, cloves do not have, so cloves have more antioxidants. This is a true statement. Ground cloves have 290,283 ORAC units. And Indian gooseberry is 261,500 units. So it's technically speaking, it's underneath cloves. So yeah, if you added cloves to your diet, I highly recommend adding cloves to your diet. Do it. No question. The problem is with cloves is that it's hard to get a decent quantity of cloves in on a daily basis, right? So a small amount, I don't know if you've ever tried before, but you put a pinch in your food and all of a sudden your entire, bean salsa now tastes like Thanksgiving, and maybe that's not appealing to you, right? Cloves have this sort of, Thanksgiving-y flavor to it, which personally I love, but after a certain point, it's kind of hard to keep adding cloves and more cloves and more cloves, because now all of a sudden all of your food tastes like cloves. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that, but Umla is the highest antioxidant containing food. This is a real food. Cloves are basically a spice that comes from, comes from a seed, I believe. Anyway, so that's the answer to that question. Here's another question. The question is, what's a good time to take Umla? What's the best time of the day? Is it morning? Is it noon? Is it night? The answer is that it doesn't matter. From everything that I've read, from everything that I've investigated, it doesn't seem to matter. So if you want to take it in the morning, take it in the morning. If you want to take it at night, take it at night. It doesn't really matter. Just get this stuff in you on a daily basis. That's the most important thing. And like I said earlier, I will reiterate this over and over and over again. The number one most important thing that you can do in the game of lifestyle change is be consistent. Oftentimes we see people who join the coaching program and follow our recommendations for a couple of weeks, and then they stop. And then they come back 2 months later and they do it for another week, and then they stop. And then they come back 3 months later and they do it for another week, and then they stop. Okay? The most important thing to incorporate into your routine, whether it's eating a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet or whether it's taking Umla, is turn yourself into a robot. Do it over again and over again and over again. Your lab values will reflect consistent behavior. So do everything in your power to make sure that you're taking this on a daily basis, and that's when you see the actual true magic. Okay. Karen asked a great question. She says, the study mentioned 500 milligrams of Umla, but how many milligrams of Umla are in a serving? And how many are in the Terrasol organic Umla powder? So Terrasol is another brand that you can buy off of Amazon. And I've tried their product, and it's a high quality product, but it just tastes terrible. That's one of the ones that I just couldn't palate. So how many milligrams are in their powder? I don't know the answer to that. But we manufactured our 1 scoop to have approximately 4 grams. That's 4,000 milligrams of Umla. And if you remember, let me go back to this slide that I showed you. The reason we came up with that number is because when you put amla head-to-head against blood glucose medication, the blood glucose medication right here, this is 1,000 milligrams, 2,000 milligrams, 3,000 milligrams of amla per day. Our dose is 4,000 milligrams of amla per day, okay? Which means it's going to act likely just as effective as this, if not even a little bit more effective. So we're trying to give you a relatively, a good dose of this stuff to make sure that it's actually going to have a lot of biological activity. And from the reviews we've been getting and from the results that we've been seeing with our clients, that's what seems to be happening. Jamie asks, how is Amla Herbal coming along? Great question, Jamie. We're in the process of trying to make an herbal formulation of Amla because this Amla does have some caffeine. Not because Amla has caffeine, but because the green tea, the oolong green tea that we mixed it with, has caffeine. Now, in terms of how much caffeine, a glass of coffee, a cup of coffee, has on average about 200 milligrams of caffeine. 1 cup of Amla Green, we have estimated it to be under 50 milligrams of caffeine. So that means it's got 1/4 as much caffeine as a glass of coffee, and so it's not nearly as powerful. But yes, it is a true statement that it has more than 0 milligrams of caffeine. So point being is we're trying to formulate a new herbal tea that doesn't have caffeine in it. And we're hoping that we can get that out within the next quarter, because I know a lot of people are asking about that, and I see that it's very important. Jeannie asks, what are the side effects? Is it different than gooseberries growing in my yard? Okay. Jeannie, great questions. The gooseberries that grow in your yard are called, most likely they're called Cape gooseberries. They're different than Indian gooseberries, okay? A simple way to know is if you taste the gooseberries from your yard, if you put them in your mouth and they're not like just kind of bitter but intensely bitter, then you don't have Indian gooseberries. Cape gooseberries are a different type of gooseberry. They don't have nearly the antioxidant content or the biological activity as Amla, so chances are it's not, unless it's intensely bitter. Also, Amla has this little characteristic green color. It's veiny. Sometimes it's light green, sometimes it's a little darker green. So there's ways to determine the difference between the two of those. And then what are the side effects, okay? The side effects of the tea that we're selling, number one, has caffeine. So if that's a problem for you, then this might not be the right solution. Number two, as far as other side effects are concerned, one other really awesome side effect that I have heard from people is that it can suppress your appetite. So think about it this way. You take Amla, it suppresses your appetite, it drops your cholesterol, it drops your blood glucose, and as a result of suppressing your appetite, most people find that they're just not as hungry, therefore they don't eat as much food, and by not eating as much food, their blood glucose comes down even more, and their cholesterol comes down even more. So as far as I'm concerned, appetite suppression is actually a good thing, because a lot of people tend to, be eating a little bit more food than, their biological set point. So that's literally those are the only side effects that I know about. And that's why we highly recommend this stuff. Okay. So Susie writes, I don't know what to do. Been taking Amla Green faithfully for almost 3 months, along with a low-fat plant-based whole food diet. I'm really discouraged. My doc just upped my Lipitor to 40 milligrams. I'm not overweight. Okay, Susie, here's a question for you. Have you ever been tested for what's it called? For genetically high, any genes that predispose you to genetically high cholesterol? The reason I'm asking is because 2% of the population has genetically high cholesterol, and for that 2% of the population, it's very important to be on a statin medication. As much as it pains me to say that, because the genetically high cholesterol can be very challenging to deal with. So the question for you, right in the chat box: have you ever been tested for an ApoE variant or any number of other gene variants that actually are known to increase your risk for high LDL? Because if so, that could be part of the problem. Another thing I would recommend is not only taking Amla Green and adopting a low-fat plant-based whole food diet. Intermittent fasting is going to be a very, very helpful tactic for controlling your cholesterol, and cardiovascular exercise is going to be a very powerful tactic. So if you haven't ventured into the exercise realm, I highly recommend that. If you haven't ventured into specifically cardiovascular exercise, I highly recommend that because that's been shown over and over again to help bring your LDL cholesterol down. All right, Anna asks, what about coconut oil and omega-3s? Okay, coconut oil is a farce. Coconut oil, like olive oil, we've been told over and over and over again, eat coconut oil is good for you. This is absolutely not a true statement. Oil is the most concentrated food on the planet. It has more calories per unit weight than any other food. There is nothing that adds more calories than oil. Coconut oil has been touted for its medium chain triglycerides over and over again. And I tell you, people who don't understand biology are very good at creating marketing gimmicks. Coconut oil is a marketing gimmick. It's phenomenal for using topically. Put it in your hair, put it on your skin. It really can, transform the actual condition of your skin and hair and nails. But don't put it in your body. Please do not put that stuff in your body because it's high in saturated fat. Therefore, it increases your LDL cholesterol and has been shown to increase your risk for heart disease. Omega-3s. Omega-3s are, antioxidant compounds that are very important for brain health, eye health, heart health, liver health, kidney health, you name it. Amla, from what I know, does not have omega-3 fatty acids. Those are not the compounds that give it its antioxidant power. If you're looking for omega-3s, you get omega-3s, number one, from food, from real food. Lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, lots of green leafy vegetables in particular. And then adding, and then also what's most important to think about is that, yes, increasing your omega-3 content is helpful, and that happens on a low-fat plant-based whole food diet, but decreasing your omega-6 content from refined grains and packaged and processed products, that's the most powerful thing you can do. So don't only think about omega-3s, increase omega-3s and decrease omega-6 at the same time. That's how you get maximum benefit. Kathleen, how much flaxseed do you use each day? The answer is 1 teaspoon ground flaxseed. That covers your omega-3 for the day, no question. Wilma, what about adding, I think you have a typo. You wrote BSO-ABA. I think you meant to write Baobab, B-A-O-B-A-B, I think. I could be wrong. What about adding Baobab to your diet? Go for it. Add Baobab. That stuff's great. High in antioxidant content, no question. What's the shelf life of Amla? Asked Betty and Allison. The shelf life of Amla Green that we're selling, the answer is you can keep that as long as it's not in a humid environment. You can keep it for up to a year. It's we have it a humid environment here in Costa Rica, and it tends to clump up a little bit. But as long as you're living in a dry area where it's not necessarily exposed to too much atmospheric moisture, then it should stay good for at least 12 months. Right, and another thing too is that if you're using it on a daily basis, then the bottle that you're using is only going to be good for 30 or 90 days, depending on the small or large. Therefore, chances are you're going to consume it before anything gnarly happens to it. Okay, Betty asks, where's Amla Green processed? The answer is, Betty, it's processed in the United States. We import the Amla Green berries. Sorry, we import the Amla Green concentrate from India. We bring it to a U.S. manufacturing facility. It is then mixed with oolong green tea here in the United States. It's packaged in the United States, sent to Amazon, and this is as far as we're concerned, this is the only thing that's not U.S. based off of this product is the actual Amla itself. Everything else comes from the United States, including the labor. Okay, Nye asks, is Amla Green safe for people undiagnosed with diabetes or high blood pressure? Absolutely. Amla is not necessarily only for people with diabetes or heart disease. You can just be, you can be disease-free. You can be normal, healthy, fine. Take Amla as well because Amla it's going to maximize your metabolic health. It will maximize your cardiovascular health. It will maximize your diabetes health. It'll maximize brain health, eye health, kidney health, you name it. We have a number of friends and family that are taking Amla who do not have any version of heart disease or diabetes, and they love it. They absolutely love it. So if you don't have any metabolic disease right now, let's keep it that way. Okay. So Lyle has a question. Been taking Amla and have had great blood glucose control and reduced cholesterol with an LDL at 95, but your triglycerides went through the roof at 487. Is this the effect of the fruit? Lyle, tell us in the chat box, are you sure, are you 100% sure that the only thing that you did that potentially could cause your triglycerides to increase is add Amla? Because I've never heard of that happening. I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but I'm very surprised to hear that. And I'm wondering if it's simply, one thing that we have seen in a lot of cases is that people consume a low-fat plant-based whole food diet that's high in fruit. And as a result of that, their blood glucose comes down, their cholesterol comes down. However, their triglycerides go up. And this is a known phenomenon. What ends up happening is that you start with fatty liver. As a result of having fatty liver, when you have carbohydrate-rich foods going into your mouth on a daily basis, especially if it's fruit, especially if it's potatoes, then your triglycerides can go up. So I would be willing to argue, Lyle, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason your triglycerides went up is because of a high fruit intake and not necessarily because of a high Amla intake. The way to correct that is actually quite simple. Increase your non-starchy vegetable intake, increase beans, increase lentils, increase peas, decrease fruit intake, decrease potato intake. If you do that, your triglycerides are bound to come down. Becky, is it safe for people with type 1 diabetes? 1,000,000%. I live with type 1 diabetes. I take this stuff every day. We have plenty of people living with type 1 that are getting incredible blood glucose control, and they are living with type 1 diabetes, so no questions asked. If you're living with type 1, don't be afraid of Amla at all. How much caffeine is in the tea powder? Like I said earlier, approximately 50 milligrams per serving, which is 1/4 a cup of coffee. Okay, next question here is, how many studies have been done to validate the results presented? Charlie, great question. The total number of studies, to my knowledge, I have to take a look into what I got, but it's somewhere on the order of the ones that I presented, there's a total of like 8 to 10 that I presented today. But the total number of studies of Amla is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So the simple way to do that is go to pubmed.org, pubmed.org, and just type in the word Amla and see what happens. You will find hundreds of studies that talk about just how effective it is. And the ones that I picked today, obviously, were just a small subset of that. Teresa asks, can you take Amla Green on days that you do an intermittent fast? Yes, 100%. No questions asked. Amla is not contraindicated for taking or for performing an intermittent fast, so I wouldn't be worried about that one at all. And Janavi says, are chia seeds okay? Chia seeds, yes, they're totally okay. I'm not sure if that's in the context of taking Amla and chia seeds together, but we recommend taking small amounts of chia seeds, about 1 to 2 tablespoons per day, and or taking 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed per day to maximize your omega-3 content, and you should be good there. Brenda says, I'm taking metformin and Lipitor. Is it safe to add Amla? Hoping my doctor reduces my dosage. Yes. Brenda, like we were talking about, metformin, Amla is an alternative. It's designed to be an alternative for both metformin and Lipitor. So if you're taking those right now and you want to get off of it, then Amla Green can definitely help you move in that direction for sure. So you can do a fun experiment here and start taking Amla Green every single day for the next 90 days. That's what I would do, because it usually takes approximately 3 days before you can get your next lipid panel. So start using Amla on a daily basis, see what happens, go back to your doctor, get a new lipid panel, and see if your triglyceride values have come down, as well as your LDL cholesterol, because I think you might be pleasantly surprised. Okay. Does Amla thin your blood? Should you stop taking aspirin daily when taking Amla? I do not know the answer to that question. I think Amla does not thin your blood. I think it is necessarily contraindicated for aspirin on a daily basis. Alex, he says, animal protein. I've watched several different health docuseries lately, and some are plant-based whole food, and others are whole food, including, quote unquote, good fats and grass-fed meat. It seems that both groups laugh at each other. Who is right? Awesome question. Alex, you're hitting this on the head. There's a huge debate in the world of, foods that contain fat. If you eat fat-rich foods, are all fats created equal? And the answer is no. All fats are not created equal by any stretch of the imagination. So some fat-rich foods are high in saturated fatty acids, and some fat-rich foods are lower in saturated fatty acids and higher in unsaturated fatty acids. So the truth is that saturated fatty acids are going to impair your cardiovascular health more than foods that are high in unsaturated fatty acids. And that's why plant-based foods tend to be very, very beneficial for your cardiovascular and diabetic health, because they have more unsaturated fatty acids. So in short, what I'm trying to say here is minimize your saturated fatty acid intake, maximize your unsaturated fatty acid intake from plant-based foods. And by doing that, you will notice that your blood glucose comes down and your cholesterol comes down very quickly. And you're right, both sides laugh at one another because the science that both sides use directly, contradicts one another. And what's the reason for that? Well, oftentimes the science that is presented can be influenced by industry and can be manipulated. And if you don't know that going into it, you can easily come up with, conclusions that say, eat grass-fed meat, when in reality, if you look at the actual source of funding of those types of studies, you'll find that it's actually funded by pharmaceutical companies or funded by large agricultural companies, because they have a vested interest in making you consume their product. So long story short, the research underpinning a low-fat plant-based whole food diet is some of the most rock-solid research I've ever seen before. Take it from me, I've read lots and lots and lots of stuff. There are a ridiculous number of studies that show that eating a low-fat plant-based whole food diet is without doubt the best way to go. All right, so we got two more questions. So let me look at them real quick. Last question here. Carolyn, would Amla affect your lipoprotein A particle? Or is there studies on that yet? So I don't. People who have high lipoprotein E end up with genetically high cholesterol. I'm sorry. People who have high ApoE, lipoprotein E, end up with high cholesterol. People who have high ApoA also are at risk for high cholesterol as well. I'm not going to say that Amla is going to fix genetically high cholesterol, because that's not a true statement. So if you do have genetically high cholesterol as a result of one of these, gene mutations, then unfortunately, I think statin medication in combination with Amla is good. Amla is good, period, end of story for anyone. And if you have lipoprotein, a high ApoA or high ApoE, then I would still recommend using it, but don't expect it to be a fix. It's going to be, a very effective treatment, but it may not be the only treatment that's necessary. All right, so that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for participating in the webinar today. Hope you had a great time today, and we appreciate your attention, your focus, and for sitting here listening to us. We'll hopefully see you real soon.